You surely picked out a nice place to run up a big bill.
High class, eh?
Oh, very.
Wonderful, boy. Well, eat up. Eat plenty. It's our last meal.
Okay.
There was certainly a lot of glitz and an ample amount of glamour back in Hollywood's golden age, but not every story had a happy ending. From lavish spending to bad gambling habits, here are 15 golden age actors who died in poverty. Number 15. Mabel Norman. Mabel Norman was your average prominent figure in the silent film era. Her career and life provided a fascinating lens through which one can examine the highs and lows of early Hollywood stardom. Mabel Norman was born on November 9, 1892 in New Brighton, Staten Island, New York. She was born into a working-class family, so her early life was marked by humble beginnings that later sharply contrasted with her rise to fame in Hollywood. Norman's formal education was limited. She is said to have attended public schools, but left early, most likely to contribute to the family's income. She showed an interest in art and illustration as a teenager and briefly studied at Cooper Union in Manhattan and the Art Students League. Mabel began her career as a model for various artists and illustrators, which brought her into contact with the burgeoning world of visual media. Her beauty and charm quickly made her a sought-after model, opening doors to opportunities in the entertainment industry. In the late 1900s, Norman transitioned from modeling to film, drawn by the promise of better financial prospects. Norman was one of the first major female comedians in film and was widely celebrated for her talent and charm. She worked closely with major figures like Max Sennett, Charlie Chaplin, and Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. As a comedic actor, writer, director, and producer, Norman was a pioneer. She directed Chaplin in some of his early films and had her own production company under Sennett's Keystone Studios. Known for her vivacious personality and comedic timing, Norman played a significant role in shaping early Hollywood style and narrative techniques. Sadly, things changed. Norman's career suffered due to her association with multiple scandals. One of them is the murder of director William Desmond Taylor in 1922. She might not have been a suspect, but she was linked as one of the last people to see him alive. Another scandal that affected her was the downfall of Roscoe Arbuckle after the Virginia rap scandal. Due to their professional association, her career was indirectly affected. The tabloid press exaggerated her involvement in the scandals, tarnishing her image and making it difficult for her to secure work. In time, there were health issues too. Tuberculosis and substance abuse significantly weakened her physically and professionally. Due to her diminished career, she was not the wealthy star she had been during her peak. Her health deteriorated rapidly, and she lost the fight to tuberculosis in 1930. She was only 37. Her life is often seen as emblematic of the ephemeral nature of stardom and the toll of Hollywood's pressures.
Find out. It'll kill him.
If that happens, there's no problem anymore.
You're wasting your time with that sort of talk.
He's a rich man, John.
Number 14. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's story is one of Hollywood's most tragic cautionary tales. A striking blonde actress with undeniable charisma, she seemed destined for stardom during the golden age of Hollywood. However, her career was short-lived, overshadowed by scandal, poor decisions, and personal struggles that ultimately led to her untimely death in poverty. Payton burst onto the scene in the late 1940s. At the time, she had signed a contract with Universal Pictures and quickly became known for her beauty and on-screen allure. She gained recognition for roles in films like Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, opposite James Cagney, and Dallas, starring alongside Gary Cooper. Her performances hinted at great potential. She just had that magnetic presence that made her a sought-after starlet. Despite her initial success, Payton's career began to unravel due to a series of personal scandals. Her tumultuous love life, particularly a highly publicized affair with actor Franchot Tone while engaged to Tom Neal, captured tabloid headlines. The affair eventually turned violent when Neal brutally beat Tone in a highly publicized brawl, leaving Tone hospitalized. The scandal damaged Payton's reputation, and Hollywood's rigid moral standards at the time made it difficult for her to recover. Studio executives distanced themselves from her, and the quality of her roles declined sharply. As her career faltered, Payton struggled to maintain the lavish lifestyle she had enjoyed at her peak. She turned to alcohol and substance abuse. Sadly, these things only eroded her opportunities in the industry further. By the mid-1950s, she was no longer considered for major roles and found herself working in low-budget films and stage productions. As her financial situation deteriorated rapidly, she found herself arrested multiple times for public intoxication and solicitation. By the 1960s, she was a far cry from her glamorous Hollywood beginnings. By the time of her death in 1967, at the age of 39, Payton was living in squalor, estranged from Hollywood and her former lifestyle. She died of heart and liver failure caused by years of alcoholism and substance abuse. At the time of her passing, she was penniless and largely forgotten by the industry that had once celebrated her. Despite her tragic end, Payton's brief but memorable time in the spotlight remains a testament to her talent and charisma. Number 13. Judy Garland. You can't think of Hollywood's golden age without mentioning Judy Garland. Can anyone deny that she was one of the era's most iconic and enduring performers? Despite her legendary career and lasting cultural influence, Garland's life was marked by financial instability, personal struggles, and exploitation, all culminating in her tragic death at the age of 47. Her story sheds light on the darker realities of fame, particularly the systemic pressures placed on child stars and women in the entertainment industry. After her breakout role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, 1939, 17-year-old Garland became one of MGM's most valuable stars throughout the 1940s. Renowned for her extraordinary vocal ability and emotional depth, she excelled across film, music, and live performance, earning her place as one of the most versatile entertainers of her time. But this success came at a steep cost. Studio executives tightly controlled her image, dictating her diet, appearance, and personal life. They introduced her to amphetamines to manage her weight and keep up with a grueling work schedule, along with sleeping pills to counteract the effects. An early form of exploitation that set the stage for her lifelong battles with addiction and mental health issues. This exploitation extended beyond her personal well-being. Garland's finances were grossly mismanaged, and no one safeguarded her long-term financial interests. By the 1950s, she owed significant amounts to the IRS due to unpaid taxes. Coupled with her extravagant spending, this left her in severe financial distress despite her substantial earnings. By the time of her death on June 22, 1969, Garland was millions of dollars in debt. Living in a rented apartment in London with her fifth husband, Mickey Deans, she tragically passed away from an accidental overdose of barbiturates. Garland's death marked the end of a brilliant but tumultuous life, one that underscores the profound cost of stardom.
What are you looking at me that way for?
Hey, you big fathead.
What's the big idea?
That's for your swimming pools and your tennis.
Number 12. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was a luminous star of 1940s Hollywood. She became an icon of glamour and mystery with her signature peekaboo hairstyle and captivating screen presence. But despite her early success, her life spiraled into financial and personal turmoil, culminating in her death at the age of 50 with little to her name. Lake rose to fame with roles in films such as This Gun for Hire, I Married a Witch, and Sullivan's Travels, just to mention a few. Her ethereal beauty, sultry voice, and on-screen charisma made her one of the most bankable stars of the early 1940s. Paired frequently with Alan Ladd, Lake was celebrated as a leading lady in film noir and romantic comedies. Unfortunately, Hollywood's tendency to pigeonhole actors limited her opportunities. As she struggled to transition to more mature or diverse roles as she aged, the changing trends in Hollywood and her waning popularity left her without the same star power she had earlier. Sadly, she had not been diligent about financial planning or anything necessary to sustain her lifestyle. She filed for bankruptcy in the late 1940s, citing over $100,000 in debts. The loss of her fortune marked the beginning of a steep financial decline. Divorces and failed relationships also drained her finances further. By the 1960s, Lake's acting opportunities had largely disappeared. She took various low-paying jobs, including working as a waitress and hotel clerk, which starkly contrasted with her glamorous past. Her health deteriorated due to chronic alcoholism that led to cirrhosis of the liver and other complications. Her addiction also contributed to her isolation and inability to rebuild her career. In her final years, Lake attempted a modest comeback, including writing an autobiography in 1969. It was titled Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake. While it garnered some attention, it did not provide her with significant financial stability. Lake died in July 1973 of hepatitis and acute kidney injury. At the time of her death, she was nearly penniless and living in relative obscurity. Her ashes reportedly went unclaimed for years, a poignant reflection of her forgotten status at the time of her passing. Despite her tragic end, Veronica Lake remains a symbol of classic Hollywood allure. Her films, particularly her work in film noir, are still celebrated for their style and influence.
There's one of the finest little weenies that ever graced a paper plate. It's a little shriveled from old age, but of course you can't have everything.
Number 11. Marie Prévost. It goes without saying that Marie Prévost's life is a heartbreaking tale of early Hollywood success followed by tragic decline. You see, despite her outstanding contributions to cinema, she died in obscurity and poverty, her story reflecting the fleeting nature of stardom during Hollywood's golden age. But before the tragic end, she was a glamorous and talented actress of the silent and early sound eras. Born in 1896, Marie Prévost began her career as a model before entering films in the 1910s. She became one of Mack Sennett's bathing beauties, gaining fame for her comedic timing and vibrant personality. Prévost transitioned into leading roles, appearing in successful silent films such as The Marriage Circle and Kiss Me Again, directed by Ernst Lubitsch. Her performances were celebrated for their charm and sophistication, and she was considered one of the era's most promising actresses. The transition to sound films in the late 1920s proved challenging for Prévost. While she successfully adapted to talkies, her career faltered due to changing taste and the arrival of younger stars. By the early 1930s, her roles were relegated to supporting parts, and her once flourishing career began to fade. The pressures of stardom, combined with personal tragedies like the death of her mother, took a toll on Prévost's mental health. She then turned to alcohol and food for comfort, but it only led to weight gain that further limited her opportunities in an industry fixated on appearance. By the 1930s, Prévost found herself in dire financial straits. Her savings were depleted, and her work offers dwindled. She became a victim of Hollywood's harsh treatment of aging actresses, particularly those who no longer fit the era's beauty standards. On January 21, 1937, Prévost was found dead in her Los Angeles apartment at the age of 40. She had succumbed to acute alcoholism and malnutrition, and her body was discovered days later by neighbors alerted by her dog's barking. Reports at the time revealed she had been living in poverty, unable to afford food despite once being one of Hollywood's top stars. Marie Prévost's tragic end highlights the ruthless nature of Hollywood's golden age, where actors were often discarded once their marketability waned. Her story underscores the lack of support for stars struggling with personal and financial difficulties. Number 10. Buster Keaton. There is no denying that Buster Keaton was one of the most iconic stars of Hollywood's silent era. Even to date, he is remembered as a master of physical comedy and as the pioneering filmmaker whose influence continues to shape modern cinema. Known as the Great Stone Face for his deadpan expression, Keaton's innovative stunts, impeccable timing, and groundbreaking use of visual storytelling earned him a place among the greatest comedians of all time. However, despite his immense talent and early success, Keaton faced significant personal and professional struggles that all culminated in a life marked by financial instability and decline before his death in 1966. Keaton began his career in vaudeville as a child, performing alongside his family in comedy routines. By the 1920s, he had transitioned to film and quickly established himself as a comedic genius with works like The General, Sherlock Jr., and Steamboat Bill Jr. His films were distinguished by their elaborate physical stunts, innovative cinematography, and a unique blend of humor and passion. At his peak, Keaton enjoyed creative independence, producing and directing his own films. His work during this period remains a cornerstone of cinematic history, influencing generations of filmmakers and comedians. Keaton's fortunes began to wane in the late 1920s when he signed a contract with MGM. While the studio system offered stability, it stripped him of creative control, relegating him to formulaic roles that stifled his artistry. The loss of independence, coupled with the arrival of sound films, marked the decline of his career. During this period, Keaton struggled with alcoholism and personal problems, including 2 failed marriages. His drinking exacerbated his financial troubles, and by the 1930s he found himself largely forgotten by Hollywood, reduced to working in low-budget films or as an uncredited gag writer for other comedians. Although Keaton never regained the financial success of his early career, he experienced a modest revival in the 1950s and 1960s. He appeared in commercials, television shows, and small film roles, including a cameo in Sunset Boulevard.
You surely picked out a nice place to run up a big bill.
High class, eh?
Oh, very.
Wonderful, boy. Well, eat up. Eat plenty. It's our last meal.
Okay.
Number 9. Bud Abbott. Bud Abbott, one half of the legendary comedy duo Abbott and Costello, was a defining figure in Hollywood's golden age. Known for his impeccable timing and ability to play the straight man in the pair's iconic routines, Abbott helped create some of the most memorable comedic moments in film, radio, and television history. Despite his tremendous success, Abbott's later years were marked by financial hardship, and he died in 1974 with little to show for his contributions to entertainment. Abbott's partnership with Lou Costello began in the late 1930s, quickly catapulting them to stardom. Their comedic chemistry was unmatched, with Abbott's quick wit perfectly complementing Costello's bumbling, lovable antics. They gained widespread fame with their classic Who's On First routine, which remains one of the most celebrated comedy sketches of all time. During the 1940s and early 1950s, Abbott and Costello were among Hollywood's biggest box office draws, starring in hit films like Buck Privates, Hold That Ghost, as well as Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. The duo also had success on radio and later television, becoming household names and earning significant wealth. Despite his success, Abbott faced numerous financial challenges later in life. Much of his earnings were consumed by poor financial management, excessive spending, and high taxes. He also struggled with gambling, which drained a substantial portion of his income. The dissolution of his partnership with Costello in the mid-1950s marked the beginning of his steep decline. The pair's popularity waned as taste in comedy shifted, and their financial troubles were compounded by significant debts. Costello's death in 1959 left Abbott without his longtime partner, and his career never fully recovered. Abbott's financial woes were accompanied by health issues, including epilepsy, which limited his ability to work in his later years. He occasionally made attempts to return to the spotlight, such as providing his voice for an animated Abbott and Costello series, but these efforts were not financially lucrative. By the time of his death in 1974, Abbott was living modestly and in relative obscurity. Despite being one of the highest-paid entertainers in Hollywood, he spent his final years struggling to make ends meet.
You know what you got? You got yourself a bet. 20 big, large ones.
It's $1 million.
If you win.
Number 8. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the most multifaceted entertainers of the 20th century. He was a singer, dancer, actor, and comedian whose charisma and talent made him a star of Hollywood's golden age. As a key member of the Rat Pack, Davis enjoyed enormous success and cultural influence, breaking racial barriers in a deeply segregated industry. However, despite his fame, he died in 1990 with significant debts. Sammy Davis Jr. began his career in vaudeville as a child, performing with his father and uncle in the Will Maston Trio. By the 1940s and 1950s, he had become a solo sensation, earning acclaim for his singing, dancing, and versatility as a performer. Davis rose to prominence in Hollywood through roles in films like Porgy and Bess in 1959 and Ocean's 11 in 1960, alongside Rat Pack peers Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. His live performances, particularly in Las Vegas, were legendary, showcasing his unmatched ability to captivate audiences with music, comedy, and dance. As a black entertainer, Davis faced significant racial discrimination, especially in the segregated venues of Las Vegas. While he performed there often, he was mostly denied basic accommodations. Despite these challenges, he became a trailblazer, using his fame to push for integration and civil rights. His personal life also drew media attention, including his controversial marriage to Swedish actress May Britt during a time when interracial unions were taboo. Davis's openness about his struggles with identity, race, and acceptance made him a complicated yet influential figure. Despite earning millions throughout his career, Davis's extravagant lifestyle, poor financial management, and legal troubles left him in significant debt. He had lived lavishly, bought expensive homes, cars, and jewelry, and also loved to give generously to friends and causes. Not that these were bad, but when put together with a bad gambling habit, his spending sprees were bound to land him in financial woes. One of the most significant financial burdens was his massive tax debt. By the time of his death, Davis reportedly owed the IRS over $5 million in back taxes. Attempts to settle these debts included selling personal assets, but the financial strain persisted. In the late 1980s, Davis was diagnosed with throat cancer, which significantly impacted his ability to perform and earn. He passed away on May 16, 1990, at the age of 64. At the time of his death, his estate was reportedly insolvent, and much of his wealth had been consumed by debt.
You drinking? I never drink. Why? Well?
Number 7. Bela Lugosi. Renowned for his iconic portrayal of Count Dracula in the 1931 film Dracula, Bela Lugosi was one of Hollywood's most distinctive and influential figures during the golden age of cinema. Known for his commanding presence, theatrical style, and distinctive Hungarian accent, Lugosi became synonymous with the role of the vampire. His portrayal of Dracula became the definitive depiction of the character, earning him lasting fame and securing his place in film history. Unfortunately, this was a problem for him. Despite his success as Dracula, Lugosi quickly became typecast in horror roles, limiting his opportunity to diversify his career. Many of the films he appeared in during the 1930s and 1940s were low-budget productions, and he often played second fiddle to other stars like Boris Karloff. Lugosi's professional struggles were exacerbated by his lack of financial acumen and his penchant for living lavishly despite modest earnings. His declining health and addiction to morphine, initially prescribed for sciatica, further hindered his ability to secure steady work. By the 1950s, Lugosi's career was in steep decline. Despite his early success, he failed to save or invest wisely, and his later years were marked by poverty. Bela Lugosi passed away on August 16, 1956, at the age of 73. At the time of his death, he was reportedly living in a modest Los Angeles apartment and had little or nothing to his name.
Didn't change, is there? All right. My serve, then. I'm afraid I'm a bit out of practice.
So am I.
Number 6. Terry Thomas. Terry Thomas was a beloved British actor known for his impeccable comic timing, distinctive gap-toothed grin, and portrayal of charming yet roguish characters. He became an international star with his roles in classic comedies such as School for Scoundrels and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Born Terry Thomas Hoare Stevens in 1911 in London, Terry Thomas initially worked in radio and music halls before breaking into films in the 1940s. By the 1950s, he had become a household name in Britain, renowned for his ability to play aristocratic, suave, and often bumbling characters. His success soon translated to Hollywood, where he appeared in major films like How to Murder Your Wife in 1965 and The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm in 1962. Sadly, the 1970s brought on changing tastes of audiences and the decline of the type of comedic roles that had made him famous. As a result, Terry Thomas's career began to wane. Additionally, he began experiencing health issues that made it difficult to work consistently. By the mid-1970s, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which gradually robbed him of his ability to perform. As his condition worsened, so did his financial situation. By the 1980s, he was reportedly living in a small flat in London, dependent on financial assistance from friends and charitable organizations. Terry Thomas passed away on January 8, 1990, at the age of 78. At the time of his death, he had little to no financial assets, a tragic end for a man who had once epitomized elegance and charm on screen. Number 5. Erin Moran. Erin Moran was renowned for her contagious smile and animal-loving heart. Sadly, her later years were anything but rosy. The actress was born on October 18, 1960, in Burbank, California. She was the youngest child of Sharon and Edward Moran, who had 5 other children. By the time she graduated from North Hollywood High School, Moran would set her sights on the entertainment industry. Her acting career began with a TV commercial, but she really gained prominence as Joni Cunningham, Richie Cunningham's sister, on ABC's Happy Days in 1974. However, prior to this role, she was a regular on the series Daktari, 1966, and made guest appearances on various TV shows, including My Three Sons in 1960, Family Affair in 1966, The Waltons in 1972, and a couple more. In addition to her television work, Moran also appeared in feature films alongside notable stars such as Debbie Reynolds in How Sweet It Is in 1968, Godfrey Cambridge in Watermelon Man in 1970, and Wayne Newton in 80 Steps to Jonah in 1969. Following the end of Happy Days later in 1984, Moran struggled to find consistent roles as an adult. She made sporadic guest appearances on scripted and reality shows, but she would eventually leave Hollywood after facing foreclosure on her home. Tragically, Moran passed away on April 22, 2017, in Corydon, Indiana, at the age of 56. She was found deceased in the trailer she shared with her husband and mother-in-law. Reports suggest that Moran's final years were marked by financial hardship and homelessness. At some point, she had even been expelled from her mother-in-law's trailer park residence. Apparently, she became accustomed to late-night escapades and returning home with the most disruptive behaviors in tow. From appearing haggard whenever she was publicly spotted and recognized, to always having a cigarette in hand, Moran may just have had the saddest couple of years up until her death. Friend and co-actor Paul Peterson admitted that he and a couple of others tried to lend a helping hand at different points, but for some reason their efforts were never enough. In his own words, "It was a very dark room. Some people don't find the light switch in time." If you made it this far, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from us.
How many years did you study the whistle?
Like the piano, it's a secondary instrument with me. The violin is my dish.
Number 4. John Garfield. John Garfield was a pioneering actor who was celebrated for his naturalistic style and intense performances that brought a sense of realism to the screen. Known for his roles in films like The Postman Always Rings Twice, Body and Soul, and Force of Evil, Garfield's career bridged the gap between traditional solo acting and the raw authenticity that would later define method acting. Garfield rose to prominence in the 1930s and 1940s, becoming one of Warner Brothers' most bankable stars. His performances often portrayed working-class characters. You could say this was a reflection of his own upbringing in New York City's Lower East Side. He became known for his brooding intensity and anti-hero roles, traits that set him apart from the polished leading men of his era. His work in Body and Soul earned him an Academy Award nomination and cemented his reputation as a trailblazer in film noir and socially conscious dramas. Despite his success, Garfield's career took a dramatic downturn during the Red Scare of the late 1940s and early 1950s. He was accused of having communist sympathies. You can imagine this was a charge that he vehemently denied. Nevertheless, his refusal to name names before the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, effectively blacklisted him in Hollywood. The blacklist not only ended his career, but also drained his financial resources as legal fees and the lack of work took their toll. Garfield's lifestyle also contributed to his financial difficulties. Known for his generosity and love of gambling, he often spent beyond his means. The combination of being blacklisted, mounting debts, and personal struggles left him in dire financial straits. By the time of his death, Garfield was living in a small New York apartment far from the wealth and glamour he had once enjoyed. He died of a heart attack on May 21, 1952, brought on by the stress of his professional and personal circumstances. Number 3. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was a groundbreaking American actress, singer, and dancer who became one of the first black performers to gain widespread recognition in Hollywood. We believe her success was even more extraordinary considering it occurred during a period of severe racial segregation and discrimination. In 1954, Dandridge made history as the first African-American woman nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress, thanks to her stellar performance in Carmen Jones. This achievement was a turning point for black actors, proving that they could lead major Hollywood productions. Dandridge also appeared in other notable films such as Bright Road and Porgy and Bess, earning praise for her talent, charisma, and stunning presence. However, her career was hindered by Hollywood's entrenched racial biases. Despite her undeniable abilities, Dandridge was often typecast or passed over for roles that could have elevated her career. Leading roles were typically reserved for white actresses, leaving her with limited opportunities and relegating her to stereotypical or supporting characters. In time, Dandridge faced consistent financial exploitation. Poor management by her financial advisors resulted in significant losses, including unpaid taxes and mishandled earnings. After a divorce from her second husband, Jack Dennison, she was left with legal debts and financial instability that didn't have an end in sight. Sadly, her failed marriage also brought on declining mental and emotional health. Dandridge faced significant personal challenges, including the care of her daughter, Carolyn, who had special needs. The stress of raising her child without sufficient resources added to her emotional burden. By the time of her death in 1965, she reportedly had less than $2 in her bank account. Dorothy Dandridge died of an overdose of antidepressants in September 1965. While the coroner ruled her death accidental, some speculated if it might have been a suicide, as she had faced immense personal and professional despair. Dandridge's career reflected the systemic racism in Hollywood during her time. Even as a celebrated star, she was excluded from opportunities that were readily available to white actresses. As a black woman in a male-dominated industry, she equally lacked the support systems and advocacy networks that could have protected her from exploitation. Her legacy endures as a pioneer who broke racial barriers in Hollywood and inspired subsequent generations of black actors. Number 2. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, one of Hollywood's most iconic stars, is still celebrated for his magnetic performances, dashing screen presence, and personal life, often as chaotic as his films were thrilling. As the ultimate swashbuckler of Hollywood's golden age, Flynn's off-screen exploits rivaled the excitement of his on-screen adventures. Despite his immense fame, Flynn passed away in 1959 at just 50 years old, burdened by significant financial struggles. His legacy stands as a blend of remarkable talent and a life marked by excess and poor financial decisions. Flynn's rise to fame began with his breakout role in Captain Blood, which catapulted him into the spotlight. He solidified his status as a Hollywood legend with performances in classics like The Adventures of Robin Hood, The Seahawk, and They Died with Their Boots On. Known for his athleticism, charm, and striking good looks, Flynn became the ideal star for adventure films throughout the 1930s and 1940s. Despite earning substantial sums during his career, Errol Flynn struggled with persistent financial issues later in life. These difficulties stemmed from a mix of extravagant spending, poor money management, and personal challenges. Flynn's lavish lifestyle included owning yachts, luxurious homes, and frequent international travel. He also indulged in costly hobbies such as sailing and an active social life marked by heavy partying. His financial troubles were further compounded by legal issues, including 2 highly publicized statutory rape trials that tarnished his reputation and drained his resources. Additionally, mounting debts to the IRS worsened his situation. A lack of financial planning and oversight ultimately made it impossible for him to recover. Much like his on-screen swashbuckling characters, Flynn's relentless pursuit of adventure and indulgence took a toll on his health and emotional well-being. He passed away from a heart attack in 1959 while visiting Vancouver, British Columbia. At the time of his death, Flynn's finances were in dire straits. Despite earning millions during his career, his estate was burdened with significant debt, no doubt a stark contrast to the wealth and success he once enjoyed. Number 1. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. Born Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle, Fatty Arbuckle was a celebrated silent film actor, screenwriter, and director. In the 1910s, he wasn't just one of the most beloved stars of the era, he was also among the highest-paid actors of his time. In 1920, Arbuckle signed a groundbreaking contract with Paramount Pictures for a staggering $1 million a year. You can see how this solidified his status as one of Hollywood's most influential figures. Unfortunately, his meteoric rise came to a screeching halt when he became embroiled in one of the most infamous scandals in Hollywood history. The controversy began on Labor Day weekend in 1921 during a lavish party filled with music, alcohol, and prominent guests. The festivities took a dark turn when a tragic incident involving actress Virginia Rappe changed the course of Arbuckle's life forever. According to Arbuckle's account, Rappe had been complaining of fatigue and discomfort and needed to rest. He claimed to have escorted her to a hotel room so she could recover. What transpired next remains uncertain, but hours later, a blood-curdling scream shattered the party's revelry. Concerned guests rushed to the room where they found Rappe lying motionless on the floor. Chaos and speculation erupted, with rumors circulating that Arbuckle had made unwanted advances toward her. Some claimed she resisted, leading to a fatal altercation. This shocking turn of events thrust Arbuckle into a sensationalized trial and forever tarnished his reputation, marking one of Hollywood's earliest and most notorious scandals. Virginia Rappe's reported final words, "He did this to me," only added fuel to the already raging rumors surrounding the incident. Arbuckle, however, maintained that he was in the bathroom at the time and had no involvement in what happened. Sensationalist newspapers capitalized on the scandal, publishing exaggerated and often fabricated accounts that painted Arbuckle in the worst possible light. Regardless of the lack of concrete evidence, such as signs of physical coercion or the fact that Rappe was fully clothed when found, the case moved to trial. Over the course of 3 highly publicized trials, Arbuckle's fate hung in the balance. The first 2 trials ended with hung juries, while the third finally resulted in a full acquittal. The jury in this final trial even issued a formal apology, stating that Arbuckle should never have been charged. However, the damage was already done. The scandal had irreparably tarnished Arbuckle's reputation, and his career suffered greatly. Will Hayes, the head of the newly formed Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, MPPDA, banned Arbuckle from working in the film industry. Although the ban was lifted a year later, the stigma lingered, making it nearly impossible for him to regain his former standing. The legal battles also left Arbuckle financially ruined. The once wealthy star found himself in significant debt, unable to rebuild the fortune he had earned during his peak. Attempts to return to filmmaking under pseudonyms achieved only limited success. By the early 1930s, Arbuckle began to experience a modest career revival. He directed films under the pseudonym William Goodrich and later returned to acting in a series of short comedies. However, this late career resurgence could not fully erase the shadow of the scandal that had defined much of his life. Arbuckle died of a heart attack in June 1933, shortly after signing a new contract with Warner Brothers to make feature films. He was reportedly optimistic about his future, but the years of stress, financial ruin, and public shaming had taken a toll on his health. At the time of his death, Arbuckle was financially destitute, living far removed from the lavish lifestyle he once enjoyed. Still think these stars have it easy? Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. You also can't miss the video on screen.